This is what happens when you allow big pharma, big tech, big government, to big food to basically dictate how the supply chains work, because they optimized everything for centralized control. And now we're going back into a decentralized world, and all that spaghetti now needs to be unwound. And it's going to be messy and scary, and it's going to be costly. And if they keep creating these manufactured shortages, it's going to cause unemployment, it's going to cause food shortage, it's going to cause energy shortages, and it's going to cause people to be in a very surly mood. And that all affects the stock market. So we're long energy, short everything else.
Good afternoon, everyone. Coming back for another month of analysis. How many things did we hit correctly in the last 30 days since our last interview? I'm right here with Bob Kudla, tradelikeagenius.com. It's gotten real so fast, so amazingly light speed fast, at changes happening so quickly, unfathomable. Just even last year in terms of the economy, energy pricing, shutdowns of factories across China. Everywhere you look, something is exacerbating the shortages and the pain, if you will, that people are experiencing across the planet. It's as if it's being purposefully amplified everywhere across all spectrums, all countries, all continents. And I really, I hate to say it, but I just think it's more of a planned collapse than it is just a random amount of different circumstances happening. And talk about the Great Reset, what they were going to do. They're going to pull energy, the rug out from under. What do we see happening in Europe? What do we see happening over in Asia? I mean, the thing for me, living and working in China years ago, the thought that China would not have enough energy to power its factories and they were going to shut down the factories and cut off exports to the planet, that was unthinkable. And even today, I still sit here saying that is completely unthinkable, yet it's happened. So where do we go from here? Hopefully today's conversation is going to shed a little light on it. Now, please remember, inside this danger, there is opportunity. Wei ji is what they would say in Chinese. There's opportunity inside the danger. So don't look at it as just a complete doom and gloom situation. There's so many positive things arising from this. There's a lot of awareness of truly what happens with global finance and energy, how things are being more manipulated. But where is the possibility for you to trade on this, find a niche on it, profit from it, keep your family safe, get your community set up, and keep you so you can ride through this transition and then arrive on the other side? So Bob, I appreciate you joining me, because just since last month, so many things have happened. Floor's yours.
Yeah, hey, maybe we'll talk next month. It was kind of a boring month, right? So,
yeah.
It's pretty funny, because people are always talking about, everybody always thought where the next problem was going to be. And lo and behold, the problems came out of the blue. Nobody, probably Xi himself in China, expected the catastrophic collapse in supply of coal and fossil fuels to run his factories. Now, part of it could be planned. Let's beggar thy neighbor with the supply chain, but he runs a big risk, with the other mandarins of China that, they're cutting into their seed corn, right? But I don't think so. I think maybe things have started this way. Same with Europe. In the last 30 days, England ran out of gasoline. Germany ran out of natural gas. China ran out of coal. India is running out of coal, and the United States ran out of common sense. And so you have this crazy international, chaos that hit all at once at the worst possible time. But it shouldn't be unexpected. We've been told, policymakers, bureaucrats have been told all along that we're having these warm winters and that we're migrating to green. So what do the bureaucrats do? They curtail investment in fossil fuels. They curtail investments in transportation, distribution of these fossil fuels. They curtail the storage of fossil fuels. And then you end up having a situation like this where things can get real. In Netherlands, how this all ties to everything is just amazing. Not only are people are going to go bankrupt, personally bankrupt, because they can't pay their energy bills, is that they're shutting down the greenhouses in the Netherlands. Because remember, everybody said, "Oh, we don't worry about food. We'll just grow food underneath the we could just grow food underneath the glass,
Picture sauce. There you go.
and just run everything on a greenhouse." Well, guess what? You don't run that off of solar power. You run it off of natural gas. And guess what? They don't have it. It's not cheap anymore. So food prices, two of the pillars of existence, okay, in Europe has been pulled out from underneath them. And in England, add the third one, transportation fuels. They can't get where they want to go. They can't get the food. They can't get the heat. And it's a nightmare. And then China has the same problem. They underinvested in coal plants, and their transition to green has been, look, everybody's transition to green is basically a sophistry. It's a mirage. You can't produce enough green energy to run a country of any kind of size. Yeah, can Denmark do it? Sure. Can Sweden do it? Sure. They have hydro plants everywhere. Can Iceland do it? Sure. They got hydro and they got solar and they got wind and wave. But can the United States do it? Absolutely not. Not in my grandchild's lifetime will they be able to do it. So fossil fuels or nuclear is here to stay, but they curtailed everything but this. The single-mindedness of the religion of the left has caused and will cause, I think it's going to be a catastrophic winter. So I think people will literally starve in the streets in first world countries this year. You and I talked about this before. Remember, we said we thought maybe 2024 would be like the nadir. Well, we're going into 2022 and we're closing in on it. Look, we're going to have the cold east. We're going to have the cold west in terms of Europe and the Northeast United States. We're drying out here like a desiccated plant out here in California, because that's what you expect during these La Niñas, is that those areas are going to dry up. And so now you have the Western salad bowl is being dried up. You have the Northwest is having trouble getting their wheat out the door. And you have Brazil and Argentina, they're expecting cold and dry for their summers, Dave. And so they're going to have trouble getting their crops out the door. And in China, it's just put on a massive campaign now, basically to hoover up everything they need to do to keep the Chinese CCP in power. They're going to be hunting for food. They're going to be hunting for energy. They're going to be hunting for basically coal, oil, gasoline, uranium, rare earths, copper. They're going to try to get it all because they need that in order to maintain power. So everything's coming together. And if this winter is any colder than they think it's going to be, because remember last year they got it wrong too. Remember they said last year the winter is going to be warm, and they got it wrong because they can't bring themselves to be objective. So they act surprised when their flawed models don't perform as the true models said they always should have been. And we're getting the same thing this year. They're calling for the same winter this year as they called last year. And they're already wrong, Dave. So I think it's going to get really, really, really intense. And, for us at Trade Genius, I like the way you put that, because sometimes when I do these shows, you get a little bit of the fair porn going. You want to talk about stuff, they get pretty all agitated, but that's not really what we usually like to talk about. We already know, I think all your listeners already kind of know what we're going to say, because you guys are aware. It's really now, what do you do about it? How do you profit from it and those things? So what we've been doing is that, and I've been on this show, we've talked about it, is that we're big in uranium. Okay. The nuke plants are getting built. France now is going to commission 2 more plants. So France is going all in on nukes, and they need uranium, and there's not enough. We have a supply deficit. There's not enough around the world. And they don't care if the price of uranium goes up 10x, they don't care, because those nuke plants are huge. And once you supply those nuke plants, you're good for 20 years. So we're in that restocking cycle that we had in 2002. 20 years later, we're restocking again. you were talking 800% moves in uranium prices. The uranium miners went through the roof, and it was a 6-year bull market in uranium. Well, we're coming in on our 2.5 year right now. So that's number one. Number two is we're way underinvested in energy infrastructure, energy drilling for fossil fuels. I don't care how committed you are to the Green New Deal. I guarantee you, your voters will make you put fossil fuels out there if they can't get their food and they can't drive and they can't live in their homes because it's too cold, or out here in California it's too hot, because of the dry summers, because we don't have enough nat gas. And so look for opportunities in there constantly, basically buy every dip, in both those names. And on the food side, here's the other thing, Dave, you and I both know this, you make urea from natural gas. But when natural gas prices are too high, you're not producing fertilizer. So you have this double whammy. You don't have fertilizer, you don't have food production, you don't have heat. Okay. And you can tie all of this back to the Green New Deal leftists, who somehow feel that there's no consequences to what they do. This is all good stuff. When people find out how snookered they were on this, is that I think people are going to be in pretty surly moods with with their governments, as long as they have enough food to eat to be mad. So that's how we see it. Nothing more complicated than that, folks. Is that energy is underinvested. We need more of it. The societies can't survive without cheap or reasonably priced energy. And if they keep creating these manufactured shortages, it's going to cause unemployment, it's going to cause food shortage, it's going to cause energy shortages, and it's going to cause people to be in a very surly mood. And that all affects the stock market. So we're long energy, short everything else.
Yeah, and ammonia plants are closing down across Europe too, due to inavailability of natural gas. And you start to take a look at all these inputs that are going into the fertilizer that are, just sitting idle. What's going to happen when it comes down to time for us to plant in the season? There's a lot of things that are getting backed up now in the full supply chain of getting the food from the farm gate to the supermarket. This is breaking down as well. And just the base constituents that make that entire, chain run. If you don't have anything to put in the fields to grow the crops, to feed the cattle, to get the dairy, okay, that's one thing. I don't drink milk, whoop-de-doo. Yeah, but everything else that's grown there too, relying on the same fertilizers that you do eat, is not going to be there. If it is grown, think about the yields that are achieved by using fertilizers versus not. So even if you were to just look at it as a realist, 10 to 20% collapse in fertilizer production globally might not come back before the planting season, as we see things unveil around the world, and they just keep dovetailing in on each other and amplifying, and you get this downward spiral loop. What happens if we do have to go a year and try to grow in the fields without fertilizer or minimal fertilizer? You can't expect any remotely yields that we've been used to. Looking at 170 bushels per acre on crops. No, you'd have to knock that down to under 100, and then it just gets to this amplification of higher food prices, food unavailability. And just today, when I was out earlier, I drove past a couple petrol stations in the morning. I knew I was going past 5 or 6 and I was going to compare prices. I found one that was $2.82. And I said, oh, okay, I got to go right back past these same stations on the way home. It rose from $2.82 to $2.99 by the time I was out running my errands and had come back to those same stations. Like, you're looking at it in real time happening. I mean, that's really just a tiny amount, like almost 20 cents up. Yeah, you can live with that. But not being able to heat your home and having the real world choice of having to starve or eat or pay your electricity bill or heating bill so you cannot freeze in your home, starvation or freezing in your home. This is not a good choice. And this is, we're talking about the UK here. So when you look across the planet, things have gone terribly wrong, and they continue to be in a downward spiral. What was the shipping? I mean, you think these ports are going to speed up and start unloading cargo faster? I highly doubt it. Everywhere you look, if you look at Ship Tracker, it's a parking lot on every coast of every continent, everywhere, estuaries, outside, continental, whatever. That I've never seen this many ships stacked up. It's as if everything's been put on halt and there's a blockade across the planet to unload cargo. It's shocking to what's happening. And if you haven't gotten ready by this point, you have a few more weeks to get ready. And after that, prices are going to start running away as the realization sets in of what really is happening at this moment.
And it's not just
Can't sugarcoat it. Can't sugarcoat it anymore.
The Red River, they're stacked up on barges trying to put oil into the storage containers. So we have problems everywhere you look in that regard. Look, I'm not letting anybody on a deep dark secret, but this is what happens when you allow governments to centralize many things and allow corporations to centralize many things. Look, you can't get paint right now because the plant that burned down in Texas was the producer of the precursor needed to blend paint. And they rebuilt the factory and they're trying to catch back up. And so, okay, one factory that basically shut down the painting industry of the United States. Well, we have that with China with pharmaceuticals. People don't realize that China provides a lot of our pharmaceuticals. Pretty scary. You think about it. Asia provides a lot of our chip manufacturing. Pretty scary if we get a hot war over there, right? And even if Taiwan could beat back an invasion of China, maybe the Chinese don't invade Taiwan. Maybe their whole purpose is basically to turn it into the Stone Age, right? Well, that affects the United States and the world significantly because of all the chip manufacturing that's being done there. So yada, 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 on it goes, on it goes, on it goes. But this is what happens when you allow big pharma, big tech, big government, to big food to basically dictate how the supply chains work. Because they optimized everything for centralized control. And now we're going back into a decentralized world. And all that spaghetti now needs to be unwound. And it's going to be messy and scary, and it's going to be costly.
Yeah, looking at how long it might take to reestablish production facilities in country XYZ, I don't care if it's the States or wherever it might be. But even when you're looking at silicon, the actual physical rock silicon, the physical substance silicon, they're running into 3x increases in that. So how long will it take, do you think, to bring commerce back to the point where we can actually manufacture heavy goods back in the US again? To bring steel plants back and get them functional again, to bring aluminum smelters back and get them functional again, to get prefabrication and fabricators, there's a lot of that because you already have most of the parts and somebody's putting it together. But, on the food side, I saw Kellogg's, you got 1,000 workers going out on strike there because they're unhappy with, mandates from larger companies, what they need to put in their bodies. And at the same time, they're unhappy about the wages they're receiving. So, with the shutdowns in the meat processing and going to 1/3 staff and 1/3 cycle of rotation on how long places could stay open before they needed to be cleaned and decontaminated, quote unquote. Now people are actually going on strike in the factories, which is something completely different than having to follow mandates and, cut production and reduced hours, et cetera. But now you got entire workforce said, we're not going to go to work. So, when you're looking at this, how decentralized does it need to get for you to have your own security around your own place? And then, how long will it take for countries to reestablish? Think about going back to the 1950s in America. How long will it take for this country to bring that back and establish itself as a major manufacturing superpower once again? We're talking in your children's lifetime. We're going to have to go through a complete restructuring here, a collapse through the chaos, and then out through the back end somewhere as things slowly are rebuilt. But population is going to have to follow the decline with this. You can't have a fully functional population that's going to trickle through these collapses. The population is going to follow the reduction of food crop yields across the planet. This intensification of the grand solar minimum, this new magnetic field forming in the outer solar system is a wild card. Nobody wants to touch that one with a 10-foot pole. You're talking about rifting in the top 2 miles of the crust and different anomalies that are going to snap rail tracks, highways, bridges, locks, water pipes, conduits, pipelines, oil, natural gas. Nobody wants to talk about that. But when those things start to magically fracture across the planet too, as Jupiter swings past the Earth, and then we actually get locked in that magnetic field until 2024, which is what Bob was referencing in the beginning. Late Q1 of 2022, somewhere around February, early March, Jupiter is going to swing past the Earth, and you're going to see a massive amount of what is considered unusual earth cracks, rifts, and fissures that are going to affect our infrastructure, in addition to everything else. And all these fires and explosions and ruptures of things happening across the planet is a precursor to what this is all about. So when you really start to juggle all these pieces together, enormous opportunity, but at the same time, a lot of things to think about to get ready yesterday for all these changes that are happening right this second and continuing to happen in front of us at light speed, not real time. And real time's way long gone. We're at light speed of everything you've ever heard coming to fruition so much faster than anybody could have anticipated. I don't know. It's a complete collapse happening at the moment.
It's simple. So, it's energy. If you're going to invest, you got to invest in energy, and it's going to be a very profitable trade. So
how about precious metals? Bob, I want to ping you. What about precious metals? What do you think about PMs right now? Gold, silver?
Until the Federal Reserve starts to control yields on the 10-year, people are afraid to buy gold and silver because they think gold interest rates may spike on them, which would kill gold and silver. I personally think you'll see interest, the 10-year yield will go negative at some point during this this maelstrom to come. And for many reasons, we can get into that another time. And so gold and silver will go through the roof. But in the meantime, look, people are buying Bitcoin. So
but 55,000 today, if anybody hadn't been watching.
Yeah, Evergrande's going to go bust. And I think Blinken, the Secretary of State's panicking, sending a note out that he made public, reminding China of their responsibilities. What's that, like government bailing out a major player? The Chinese may let that thing go. And what we don't know, but the Chinese do know, and probably Blinken knows, is where all the bodies are buried on this daisy chain. This can make Lehman Brothers look like a side story. We're talking $315 to $300 billion of debt. I think Lehman Brothers was like 60 billion. Today that would just be like, let's just write a check. But China can't write a $315 billion check to take care of this debt. And so, they're going to have to let some banks go and also other investors, but we don't know who they are, but the Chinese do. And so this thing could reverb through Europe as if they don't need anything else on their books, and then boomerang back into the United States. So we may have a Lehman moment on top of all this. And so you have, what you're talking about with the food and the different, conjunctions and the energy and the political. Look, we're in the fourth turning. It dovetails right into what we're seeing with the climate. So people are politically very surly, and so you basically were replicating the 70s. We had the same basically setup too. Remember in the 70s, they thought we were going to go global cooling. Remember that?
New ice age,
Today, they think we're going global warming, but we're going to get the opposite. So it's going to be really interesting. And speaking of gold and silver miners, is South Africa has a shortage of energy too. So when you have shortages, they may shut the mines down too. So there's just a lot going on, Dave. And people don't want to hear it because people like to make simple connections. That's why, when I talk to people and they ask me about all this stuff, I said, look, a lot of it is Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah. But what you're going to get is food inflation, energy inflation, rent inflation, health inflation. You're going to have uncooperative government. So what that means is you want to buy the things that hurt when you drop it. You want to store the things that are going to keep you alive, and you're going to want to avoid all the other companies out there. And you need to get into a defensive mindset, and you'll come out the other end, prosperous, and you'll be able to take care of your friends, and you'll be able to basically lead the vanguard out of this whatever it's going to be, that we're going to have over the next 4 to 6 years, before we get a minor reprieve in the energy of the earth. And I don't mean fossil fuels. I mean, just the general energy coming from the sun and from the universe into the earth is basically diminishing, and that's what's causing a lot of these issues.
So give me your
So
top
people
three things
feel
to
it
talk.
too. We're magnetic creatures too. So, we feel the gravitational pull. The reason why they call people lunatics is because the lunar affecting people during the new moons and the full moons. Okay, so there's a lot of interplaying here right now.
And remember, tradelikeagenius.com, use the promo code FALL.
65% off bundled, 40% off non-bundled. The bundles are already pre-discounted, but take advantage of by Saturday. I think you'll like what we have and what we do, and we have our pulse on it, so we think we're going to stay ahead of the game. But
yeah, and use the promo code FALL. I'll leave the links in the description box below so you can catch up on all the information. Bob, I appreciate you joining me. I hear the dogs in the background. The alarms are on. The live alarm.
Yep, that's why I got to go.
All right. Talk to you.
I'll see you. Bye-bye.